Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
It's the most wonderful time of the year. But then yesterday I was in the Costco parking lot at 10:15 in Clovis.
No, don't do it.
And I had to, I found a spot, which was a pretty significant accomplishment in life. And I had to change a battery, and I did it in the parking lot. So I was there for like a couple minutes watching all of the people during the most wonderful time of the year fighting each other to get into Costco. Because, you know, they might run out of something. I don't know. They have everything by the pallet there. But people were angry, honking, yelling. It was insane. And then I finished changing the battery and got in my car, and literally it was like midway through. It's the happiest. Yes, you got to be kidding me. Whoever wrote that song never been to Costco 3 days before Christmas. There's something to me about like that experience, and then there's the experience I had. Do you have a memory as a kid growing up where you opened a present that was like as quintessential Christmas? Do you have a memory of like that? And do you remember how you got the gift? My parents are kind of the tricksters when it comes to gift giving. And so the thing I wanted for that Christmas was a basketball hoop. I only asked for one thing that Christmas, a basketball hoop. I didn't want to like muddy the waters with anything else I wanted because I was so focused on one thing, and it was what? Basketball hoop. Had to have it. So we get towards the end of the gift giving. You know, you can see like the gifts are dwindling under the Christmas tree, and my junior high mind is starting to do the math that, hey, the big gifts are coming out soon. And eventually we get to okay, this is the last gift, everyone. And they hand me a gift, which was discouraging because I don't know that a basketball hoop would fit on my lap. And I started to open it, and I opened a basketball. And my parents said, well, you know, Josh, this is what we could afford this year. Maybe next year we can do basketball hoop. And then my brothers opened their big gifts, and I started to do like junior high Christmas math, you know, where it's like, wait a second, now and I just remember being kind of disappointed. And then my parents, after all the gift giving's done, a few minutes later, like, hey, Josh, why don't we go outside and play with your basketball? And I was like, and do what? I have a ball. I'm missing one of the key components in basketball. And I opened the door to the garage, and standing there before me is what? Basketball hoop. And I just remember this move of emotion from like disappointment to like, do you have a moment like that? Maybe not quite that drastic, but just that moment that reminds you of Christmas. Like, I love that. And there's like that moment, and then there's Costco 3 days before Christmas moment. And there's something about repetition that I think can kill wonder in us. And this morning I want to compare two people from the Bible that kind of have different reactions. And so if you've got a Bible, I'd invite you to turn with me Luke chapter 2. I want to take a look at the Christmas story and compare a person with a group in that. As you're turning there, I just want to kind of give you an idea. So there's a census that's been called, and so Mary and Joseph are going back to the place of Joseph's ancestors so they can check in and be counted as part of the census. And Mary at this point is very, very pregnant, and that's where we pick up our story. So if you're with me, feel free to join along. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. A couple things stand out. First off, who gave birth?
Mary.
This is not a trick question. Cool. And then who wrapped the baby in cloth?
She did.
Mother of the year. Am I right? I've never caught that before, that she not only gave birth, but she wrapped the baby up, and that's amazing to me. And these cloths potentially were the rags that they would use to while milking or working on the animals. She potentially stripped them up, or it could have been strips of their clothing. They would wrap the baby up. That'll become important later in the story, but Mom of the Year, and which is really incredible to me. And then she places him in a manger, and really it's probably like a trough, and so it might have been something like this. So you have your firstborn child, you have wrapped your child as best as you can, and then you place him in this. Or maybe it was made of wood too, with hay. It's possible. That's kind of what we like to see. But regardless, and the reason she does that is because why? There's no room. And the place they probably were going to look to check into probably wasn't like a high-end resort or hotel. It's probably like an Airbnb, or maybe even more like a hostel, right? Like there's kind of room, and and so there's no room available for them. And this is the first person I want to point out, and they're not even mentioned. But the first person I want to take a second and look at is this person that we just called the innkeeper. And notice he's not actually mentioned anywhere in the passage, or she's not mentioned anywhere in the passage. Bottom line is, the reason that this person's not mentioned is because there's nothing to mention. And as I was kind of doing some research on this and trying to find out like what the deal with this person is, this person's kind of been villainized. Like a lot of people have different opinions as to why this person wouldn't let a mother who was very pregnant and on the verge of giving birth into their house. But here's kind of what I found. There was one person who quoted and said that the Jews were not a barbaric people. They weren't Aborigine tribes that sent their women off into the jungle to have babies alone on a banana leaf. No, instead they're civilized, intelligent, educated, and above all, hospitable people who care deeply about human life. It would be really unusual, therefore, for a young woman who's about to give birth to be turned away from an inn and instead give birth in a stable. And one other person went on to basically say that there's really no indication that the innkeeper was hostile or even unsympathetic. He was just what?
Busy.
Does anyone else been pretty busy recently? Like in the Christmas season a little bit? And I don't know if anyone else is like me, who sat down yesterday and was like, okay, if I don't order it today, Prime can't get it here before Christmas. Today is the day, right? No one else, right? Okay, good. The Amazon guy at this point, we know each other on a first name basis, the guy that delivers to my house. Right? I mean, it's like there's all this stress and there's all these special things and there's all this stuff going on and there's a lot of pressure to get. And I think sometimes all of that for me can kill the wonder of what Christmas used to be. And this girl she's just busy. Not mean, not whatever, but there was a huge opportunity in front of this person, and they missed it. And they missed it because they were busy. And then you compare this person with a group. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks. And notice it's at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. Couple things. One, how many angels? One, singular, right? Okay, good. And two, what time of day is it? Night, perfect. So do you put society's best and brightest at nighttime watching sheep? No. Matter of fact, one person actually said this, that odds are in the early history of the Jews, that shepherding was actually kind of a noble job to have. But then at some point they ended up in slavery with the Egyptians. And in that time in Egypt was a very agrarian society. They grew all the food that they ate. They were big on farming because they had the Nile there, So they have very fertile land. And so if you have a bunch of crops on the ground and you also have a bunch of sheep, what's your problem? Sheep do what? They eat the crops. And so the Egyptians banned all sheep and goats to outside the city in the desert because they didn't want them eating the crops. And so slowly but surely over Israel's history, there's this shift from noble profession to all the way down to like, hey, we banish them outside the city now because we don't want them eating our food. You with me? So bottom line, these guys are not like at the top of the social ladder. These guys are humble, lowly people, or some of them may have even been some pretty bad dudes. The other thing is at night, it's a little more dangerous, wouldn't you agree? Yeah. There's like more predators, and there's also like thieves would come and try and steal the sheep. They're more likely to do it at night because it's hard to sneak up in a desert during the daytime. Also, at some point in my life, this is just the way I think, I really want to see someone steal a sheep. I just want to see it happen. I don't know how it would happen, but you have to carry it away, and that would just be hilarious to me. Not at all important, just what Josh thinks. And so the shepherds are there, and it's pitch black dark. You ever left a pitch black movie theater immediately into the outdoor sun? Yeah. You know that moment of like complete blindness? Yeah. This is the glory of God. Not a star 93 million miles away. So maybe even brighter. And it's pitch black, maybe there's a torch, to sheer blinding light. And their response is what? They're terrified. Here's what I've kind of come to believe, that sometimes terror precedes wonder. That sometimes terror precedes wonder, and we want wonder, but we don't want terror. And wonder kind of has like two meanings. Like the first one is like curiosity, like, I wonder if you could do this. I wonder what it would look like for someone to run away with a stolen sheep. Like that's the first, right? Curiosity, like I wonder. And then there's the second half of wonder, which is like standing in awe and amazement of what has happened or what is being done or what's going on. Does that make sense? So there's kind of those two definitions. So sometimes terror precedes wonder. And certainly for these guys, they see the glory of God and an angel appear, and their immediate response is not wonder or curiosity or amazement, it's terror. And then the angel begins to speak to them and says this, but the angel said, "Don't be afraid." Have you ever been really, really, really afraid? I mean, like walls are closing in, you're shaking a little bit, that perspiration that you like try to hide, mouth goes dry. You ever been that afraid? When I was in 8th grade, one of the things about me is I tell people that I don't like roller coasters, but it's a lie. I'm terrified of roller coasters. I had a really bad experience when I was 5. But it's really hard to both be cool as an 8th grade kid and be at Six Flags amusement park. It's hard to do both those things together because no cool 8th grader in my class was like, let's see the dolphins. Nobody wants that. Everyone's like, let's ride the death metal band sounding roller coasters of death. So there was this group that included this girl that I might have had a crush on. And they're like, let's go ride this ride. And I had this like, you ever done this? You ever been afraid, but you're like, no, today it ends. So it's like, okay, Josh, nobody has ever, not that many people have died on roller coasters. Not a good starting point, right? Like, oh, great. And it's not that big of a deal. And you're in 8th grade now, and that was when you were in kindergarten, and lots has changed, and you just got to do this. And so I got in line. It was like a 45-minute line, which was bad because I had a lot of time to think about it. And then you get closer to the roller coaster and you hit this point eventually where you enter. You're not inside yet, but you're in a covered area and you can see the doors. I've never gone through the doors except once when I was a kid. I've tried to block that memory out as much as possible. I just know if I get close, the closer I get to those doors, the more I'm sweating. And 8th grade me does what any cool 8th grade kid would do. I made up the lamest excuse I could think of and bolted. I physically ran away. Now in that moment, thanks Emma, in that moment, if you had been able to be aware of what was happening, you could see the little perspiration, you could tell that I was really, really afraid. If you could have looked at me and been like, Josh, don't be afraid. Do you think that would have made any difference whatsoever? No. When you were really, really scared, think about that time. If someone had said like, dude, just don't be afraid. Does that fix anything? But the angel said to them, don't be afraid. Oh, that pretty much wraps it up then. Great, fantastic. No, I think they're terrified the whole time. It says, I bring you good news that will cause great joy for who? All the people. And then it goes on to say, today in the town of David, his Savior has been born to who? To whom? To you. And here, English has a hard time with this word you in a way that other languages don't. English, I can say you and be talking to one of you right now. I can say you and be talking to all of you right now. You is, it's hard to tell between singular and plural. Are you with me? But in this instance and in other languages, it's really easy because the endings change. This is a singular you. So today there's good news, great joy, all people, the world, right? And at the same time, the Savior has been born to you individually, shepherd. And to you individually, shepherd. And to you individually, shepherd. And I love the duality and the greatness of God, that he can both be for all people and also be specifically and individually for you. And there's a clip that I found that really kind of helps show this in a really cool way. It's done by the Skit Guys, except it's, in this case, it's Skit Guy. And he kind of reenacts what it might have been like to hear a shepherd tell a story that night. Let's take a look.
It was a night like any other night, except for that angel. Ain't seen nothing like it before or since. Us shepherds, we don't get a lot of excitement out there in the pasture. But that angel, it was so bright, so beautiful. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Sam, you've been out in that pasture just a little bit too long. And you'd be correct. But that all changed when that angel came right up to us. And the angel said, don't be afraid. I was like, too late. And then the angel said, no, I wrote it down. I need to get this right. Hold on. Okay. The angel said, milk, bread, no, that's my grocery list. Then the angel said, I have good news of a great joy that shall be for all the people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And then the angel said, he's lying in a manger, wrapped in cloth, go find him. Okie dokie. So we're all sitting around, and then one of the shepherds, I think it was Steve, he's like, hey, what are we doing? Let's get out of here. Let's go to Bethlehem. So we hightailed it out of there, and we found that beautiful baby. I'll tell you, I was a different man after that. God chose me. And nobody's ever chosen me for anything. I'll never forget what that angel said, though. The angel said, I bring good news to all people. That means you too.
Maybe you can relate with this guy. I love when he says, nobody had ever chosen me before. And maybe that's how you feel like it is. And I'll tell you that I think the things that were true of God 2,000 years ago are also true of God today. And so he picked shepherds. He was for all people then, and I think the same's true now. And I feel like Jesus coming to earth was kind of like an all-in move. Like, you ever wonder how God felt about people? It really got cleared up when Jesus showed up. And in this moment, God picked us. In this moment, Jesus left heaven and came to earth and would eventually die. And in doing so, he did it all because he chose me. He did it for all people. And also he did it for you. And this all-in move by Jesus of picking us, I think the most appropriate response for someone who's done something significant for us is to choose them back. Right? It's like the ultimate dating relationship conversation where they're like, well, I like you. And then there's that awkward silence and you hope they say, I like you too. You hope they reciprocate. Jesus has gone all in terms of how he feels about you. He loves you immensely so much that he showed up on earth and would eventually die. And what he wants in response, I think, is for us to choose him back. To us to go, look, I've lived my life my way, but knowing what you've done, I now want to live my life your way. You lived your life for me, I now want to live my life for you. And if you've never done something like this, man, I don't know if there's a more significant decision you could make this morning than to, in your own words, kind of tell God, I know that you picked me. Today I want to pick you too. And I want to start living life your way. And if that's something that you're interested in, man, at some point today, I just encourage you to pray that and to talk to one of us. We'd be happy to work through that. But I just love this moment. I felt like it was appropriate to pause to remind all of us that though Jesus came for all people, he came for you. And I love that reminder. Now, if you remember, angel showed up. One glorious light of God's glory shows up, pierces the darkness, and they're terrified. So then, to help things out, this will be a sign to you. You'll find the baby wrapped in cloths, remember, lying in a manger. And then, to help things out, suddenly a great company of the heavenly host appeared. So they were terrified with one. So let's send a whole bunch more. That'll make it better. And they began praising God, saying, glory to God in the highest heaven and on earth, peace to those in whom his favor rests. I love this because heaven's response to Jesus' entrance is glory and praising God, and earth's response to Jesus' entrance should be what? Peace. Jesus has come. He stepped in. He's taken the place of, I no longer have to because he has. Peace is the response. I love that. And then we get this moment. So up until now, I would say that they were initially terrified, and then I don't know what's worse than terrified, but they became that when the rest of them showed up, right? Then all at once, they all just vanish. And it's at this point that the shepherds begin to talk to one another. And this is where I think you begin to encounter the first part of wonder in the story. It's the curiosity. It's the I don't know, once they kind of recovered from that traumatic moment, I think that shifted to okay, well, somebody's got to go check out if this thing really happened. Somebody's got to go to Bethlehem. They were probably 2 miles away. And what I love about these guys in comparison to the innkeeper is that these guys didn't just hear, didn't just get presented with an opportunity, they actually pursued it. The innkeeper was presented with an opportunity. There was a woman that was about to give birth. No, he didn't get the angelic announcement, but in fairness, neither have I, right? But he gets this opportunity to help a woman who's about to give birth and begin this young family, and he's like, sorry, there's no room. Like, of all the people in his inn, the last one that should have had to be in a stable is Mary, right? And yet, he just was, well, sorry, you didn't get here in time. These guys are also supposed to be working. You know, one of the things I've realized, if you're a sheep in a story that Jesus tells, it doesn't go well for you. You just get left places. I mean, look, it's like they get together and they just leave. What about the sheep? It's okay, it's dark. It's like the worst time you could leave them. Notice how they go too. They hurried. Look at the urgency. I love that. They didn't like, well, I guess we should maybe go check this thing out. They're like, no, game on, let's go. I like the way he said it in the film. He's like, okie dokie. I love that. I think it's great. And I love their urgency to go do it. And here's what I'm really convinced of, that when we respond in faith, it's contagious. But when we're too busy, it's also contagious. Have you ever been shopping in a store and you see somebody that you kind of know, but like maybe things didn't, like, it's not your favorite person, and so you're like, oh, and then you just like, eggs are on sale? Oh my goodness, I've got to go look at these eggs. And you just kind of like walk away and like with this like, please don't see me, please don't see me, please don't Has anyone here ever done that? Good, just me. So I did this recently. There was someone in a store when we were Christmas shopping, and I was like, oh, things ended between us with a confrontation. I don't like that. I haven't seen them in years. I could say hi to them, but there's a great gift wrap sale. I mean, anything else. And I walked away, and later I came home and started working on this. Doggone it, I missed it. I missed an opportunity. What if sitting down with that, like, hey, how's it going? Oh man, it's so good to see you. We ended things really awkwardly, but since our conversation, I've really done a lot of thinking, and it really helped me grow a bunch. And I just had this thought, what did I miss by avoiding that conversation? Similarly, when I was in college, we had to go to chapel 3 times a week, and it was kind of like a church service, and like to record your attendance, because you had to go, there were these, like, they put everyone's name on this wall before chapel began, and you had to go before you sat down and cross your name off. And then that recorded your attendance. And if some of you are like me, you're thinking, I wonder if before chapel begins, you could just go cross your name off and then leave. And I'm here to tell you definitively with great certainty that you can, because I may have done it a couple times. And a bunch of times it's like, well, I have finals. Well, I have this going on. They don't understand. I've got this project. They don't understand. I'm just tired. I'm really busy. And I started thinking back, it's like, man, what if I missed the chapel service that had the message that was like, this is what you need to hear? But I never look at it that way, because I'm too busy. And busyness is contagious. And I'm convinced that busyness kills wonder. That if you want to have wonder in the Christmas season, but not just in the Christmas season, if you want to have wonder in life, if you want to be a part of significant things, then you've got to find a way in the midst of life that is busy to make space even when it doesn't feel like there is some. These guys are supposed to be doing a job, but that didn't seem to stop them. They were like, look, I know we're busy, but we got to go see this thing, and they made room for it. And I don't do that well. Maybe you're like me. But I miss a lot of stuff because I've got all these things I got to do. The shepherds weren't like me. And I really want my life to be more like the shepherds. When they had seen the baby Jesus, they spread the word concerning what had been told to them about this child. And all who heard it were what? Amazed. Amazed is a word I would use to describe wonder, wouldn't you? When you see something wonderful, one of the responses is amazement. And the people that heard it, they just heard it. These guys heard the angels, went and saw it, were filled with wonder, went and told everyone about it, and the people they told were filled with wonder. And that really is interesting to me, because I think sometimes what we do is the greatest way to fill people with wonder. When we tell our stories of what we've done, and typically for others, that fills people with wonder. I was in Milwaukee last week, and we had breakfast with this girl who grew up in church, but then has since seemed pretty clear has left it. And she mentioned her dad's coming into town for Christmas, and her dad was like, hey, I see you live right next to this church, so for sure we're going to go to church on Christmas Eve and watch this service. And she was like, but I told my dad, look, I'm 31 years old. I think I'm like old enough now to make decisions as whether or not I'm going to go to church or not with you, and I really don't want to be a part of it. And then she said this, she said, but I remembered that this particular church was super involved in the community, and they would work with other organizations and restaurants to get all all their leftover bread and leftover food and go around in the community and hand it out. And I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to go check it out. What really stood out to me about that is the thing that got her attention was she was surprised that an organization would take their time to help in the people in the community. So then I had this thought. When you tell people about Flipside, how do you describe this place? And maybe you're like me. Maybe the first thing you say is like, well, it's not your normal church. Is anybody else like that's? There is no normal church. What church are we talking about? Because churches are made up of people, and people are not normal, right? So that's like almost always the first, well, it's not your normal church. And they're like, oh yeah, no, neither's mine. Yeah, that's cute. And then we keep talking, and it's like, well, so like we do this thing in the community where we take over the high school and the junior high and we dress up adults like zombies. And then we chase kids around in the dark with like strobe lights and air horns and flour. As churches do, you know. Yeah, take that. Our church isn't normal either. Yeah, top that, right? And as we talk, and it's like, but it's interesting that as I describe our church, one of the main things I describe is what we do. And then I had this thought. I wonder how often my busyness has prevented me from being filled with wonder. Because nobody likes to hear the story of like, man, tell me about like something really exciting. You're like, man, I just finished my taxes. It was a wild ride. You would not believe I filled out Form 1073B and it changed everything. Like, that's not really going to be like, wow, you live a wild life. Like, nobody says that. But when you say things like, yeah, you know, I just finished this thing. A group of people that I know are super generous. We bought 100 Thanksgiving turkeys and gave them out to a bunch of people. Have you ever ordered 100 Thanksgiving turkeys at a store? That's its own comic relief in itself. Nobody understands. You want 100? Why? So we're going to give them out to people. And then it's like, oh, that's super cool. And it shifts to wonder, like, really? You would do that? And I'm always like, I wouldn't, but I work with a group of people that are like super excited about this, and so I get to be a part. It's awesome. I don't have the resources for 100 turkeys, but I know some people that together do. This story ends with Mary treasuring all these things and pondering in their heart. I think this is maybe one of the glimpses that Mary gets that everything that God had told her was in fact true. Like the shepherd's faith and the people's response is so encouraging. I think Mary's encouraged in this moment. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they'd been told. And they're filled with wonder because first they heard about it, then they did something about it, and now they're filled with wonder. And I wonder how often I see an opportunity, but I don't want to do it, so I don't get the wonder. Does that make sense? Like I see, like, oh man, that person just dropped that. I could help them. Or I could go get in line for gas because there's a lot of people and it's Christmas Adam, you know, which is Adam before Eve, so today's Christmas Adam. Anyway, it's a thing you wouldn't understand. Right? There's actually a scientist that started to look into this idea of moments because not all moments are created equal. When you remember an experience, you probably don't remember the whole thing. You probably remember the best or the worst part of it and the last part of it. Because that's the way we work. And in his writing about moments, one of the things he talks about is that a lot of times people think to create a moment, it takes a ton of money and a ton of time. And it can, but it doesn't have to. Has anyone in here ever purchased a car from CarMax? Okay, so when you purchase a car from CarMax, there's this thing that they do where they will bring your car out to you with this on it. And if you're into social media, then you post like 1,800 photos of your car with the bow on it because... I don't know, because you want people to know that you got a new car. And here's my question. How much does that bow cost? I guessed like if we were swinging for the fences, maybe $100. But to be honest with you, I have no idea how much bows cost. I should have looked this up. And then as far as I understand it, once you like, hey, we brought you your car, you drive it up, bow on it, and then like they take it off because it's illegal to drive with a bow on the hood of your car. And what do they do with it? They put it on the next. And here's my question. Do you think you'll ever forget the day you bought a car with a yellow bow on it? No. Here's what I love. Did it take much time? No. Does it take much money? But it's an experience, wouldn't you agree? It's a moment that you won't forget. I bought a car recently. There was no bow. I was angry. And here's my point. Stuff like this fills people with curiosity. It makes people go, wait, what? It's not the status quo. And I think that's what fills people with wonder. So here's what I want to challenge you with this week. What does it look like to enter the next week, which is a loaded week, right? There is all kinds of stuff happening, with the intention of trying to make a new moment, trying to create a moment that will be remembered, to tweak something just a little bit, to maybe come up with something new, with the goal being that we remember this moment because it's significant. That there's some curiosity, like I wonder what would happen if we did this, and everyone does it, and it may not go well, and sometimes that creates just as much wonder, right? Sometimes things that go bad create just as much wonder as things that go good, but here's what I do know, wonder is memorable. Yesterday, we were sitting, and in the midst of next week for us, one of the things that we're going to do is participate in the memorial for Karen's grandmother who passed away recently. And we were sitting and kind of planning the memorial, and at some point I just had this realization, like, this is the same as every memorial I've ever been to. And Karen's grandma was a magnificent woman and very involved. And I said, so like, what would be one thing that would just be totally her? And the response is like, someone should sing a song. And I said, what song should they sing? And Karen's mom went, sunrise, sunset, and began to cry. We're going to talk about emotional connection, right? And then that moment passed, and after that moment, they were like, okay, so we should do a song. What song should we do? And I was like, are you kidding me? That one. Seems like that one's got some... And then we started talking about the reception. It's like, how can we make this different? Karen's grandma, have you ever known anyone that does a thing where they have rubber bands and they just wear a bunch of them on their wrist? Yeah, me neither. So all of the tables in the reception are going to have tons of rubber bands on them. I don't know if you'll ever remember the reception for a memorial that you went to of someone's life who lived to be very old, where the table decorations are rubber bands. And if you think you might forget them, me shooting you with the rubber bands will ensure you definitely do not forget. And here's what I love. How much do rubber bands cost? Nothing. Is there a ton of time required to get the rubber bands and put them? No. But it's memorable. It makes people go, wait, what? What are the rubber bands for? And I personally, me, just because I'm mean, will be like, oh, you'll see. Just to like make people be like, wait, what? I didn't see any opportunity. That's exactly the point. I just like the uniqueness of that. I like the intentionality behind that. And more often than not, to create a moment just requires intentionality. And it's moments that I think provoke wonder. So here's my check. What can you do this week to make a new moment? Because that moment's what fills people with wonder. And I think wonder is contagious. That's what I'm going to do this week, and put rubber bands on a table. What are you going to do? Let's pray.